Check 1, 2.
Go! Curious about real estate? Yes! Then you've come to the right place. Get the knowledge you need. Get over the fear and get started. This is the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show with your host, Michael Quarles.
Hello, everybody. Michael Quarles with the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show, and welcome to podcast episode 292. We are getting close to 300 of these. We've got another 90 or so daily deals and some interviews as well. So we're well over 400, but it feels good to have 300 of these coming soon. Today I wanted to go over the 5 questions that were sent in by real estate investors like yourself. And remember, if you have a question, send it to support@michaelquarles.com. Here we go. Do we get the lockbox authorization signed when we sign the purchase and sell 3-page agreement? Well, the 3-page agreement, now I have two, let me back up. I have 2 agreements, a 3-page agreement that I do virtually and a 9-page agreement I do in person. The reason we don't do the 9-page virtually is it's a little harder to explain over the phone, so it makes it a little rougher, so we condensed it down to a 3-page agreement. But if I'm in person, it's going to be the 9-page agreement. And if you absolutely get a contract signed, and one of the things I like doing is asking for a key right then and right there. And if it is owner occupied or vacant, I am going to have the owner sign an authorization to install a lockbox. If it is tenant occupied, I'm going to have the owner sign the authorization to install a lockbox. I will eventually make my way over to the property itself, introduce myself at the appropriate time. Most likely that's going to be after I have confirmed that I in fact want to buy it. So I'm going to go through my BPO, my home inspections, and my appraisal, as I do not want to deteriorate any relationship between the seller and the tenant prior to being 100% convinced that all the information that I'm going to learn supports my purchase price. But the moment I'm fine with it, I'm going to introduce myself to the tenant as the new owner, let them know I have a key to the property, and let them know that I have the seller's authorization to enter the property. To show it, I am not going to inconvenience them. I'm going to get their information from them and schedule appointments, and I'm going to get the authorization signed that the seller signed. At that point, there's a little space for the tenant's signature. If I have a non-cooperating tenant, I am going to let them know about the posting requirements that I have. And if I have to post, I have to post authorization to enter. Since I already have the key, it shouldn't be a big deal. We want to make this stuff as painless as possible. We are professionals. We are always concerned with people's well-being and their livelihood and their home safety. And one thing we should not ever do, whether it's tenant occupied or owner occupied, is take pictures of inappropriate items in the house. One of those things that we've got to be conscientious of is very expensive items, because typically we're going to put those pictures on the MLS. When we list the property, we definitely do not want to show potential criminals, things that could be inside of a house, especially since we're also advertising the address. If they have children, we absolutely do not want to take pictures of children or any indication of that if we can avoid the indication. Just be appropriate to the safety and well-being of those folks that are living within the dwelling. It just seems like if you'd want someone to be concerned about your well-being and your living arrangements, then you should be the same way with someone else. So be conscientious of that. Don't post pictures that are inappropriate on the internet, and be apprised of what is and what is not appropriate. But as far as getting the authorization, absolutely. Get it as soon as you can get it, but as long as it's appropriate. And again, from a tenant's perspective, it's going to be appropriate after you do all of your inspections and appraisal and confirm for a fact that you in fact are going to buy the property. Great question though. Question number 2, what can I do to create more business? Oh boy. As much marketing as you can, but let's assume for a second that question was more about, without having to spend gobs and gobs and gobs of money in marketing, what can I do? Well, every Sunday, every Saturday, there's going to be a open house somewhere. Those are houses that are offered for sale to the public. Most of them are going to be offered through a real estate professional. However, you're going to also find some for sale by owners. We refer to them as FSBOs. Spend a Sunday 4 times a month or a Saturday 4 times a month in your marketplace and go visit some FSBOs. You can go to Trulia or Zillow.com and actually get a list of the for sale by owners in your market. They'll actually give you the seller's phone number. You can have a conversation if you want. But they want to sell their house. Why not just go over there and take a look at it? You can do the same thing with active for rent. So if you're driving down the street and you see a for rent sign, and you can tell the ones that are for rent by owner and the ones that are for rent by agency. The owner ones, I'm going to call the owner from the for rent sign. Communicate with that person. Now that person is good to us for 3 possible types of people, if that makes any sense. Naturally could be a seller. They could be a buyer because they're investors too. That's what an absentee owner is. But they also could be a joint venture partner or / lender after we've created a relationship with them. Some of those folks like helping folks out in the marketplace, especially new investors who have an eagerness to learn what they know and what they've learned. Some of those folks like helping. So understand that value conversation and what it is. Fall forward on those. I would visit the courthouse, and I would, on the day that they have unlawful detainer hearings. An unlawful detainer is when an owner of a property is evicting a tenant and they go to court. That owner is typically there, and it would be a good opportunity to say hello to what could be a highly motivated owner of a piece of property. Keep in mind that they're evicting folks who haven't paid rent, probably will be having some maintenance issues once the folks move out because people aren't too polite when they move out of a property in those situations. So I would do those 3 things. Join my Chamber of Commerce. It costs about $500 a year, and get on the ribbon cutting committee. Every time that there's a new business that opens, I would show up if I had the opportunity and the time. Introduce myself to the like-minded professionals that are also showing up. Meet folks in my community, let them know that I'm the walking, talking professional real estate investor that I am, and always look for referrals. Every time I'm at the gym or Subway or McDonald's or wherever I'm at, I'm going to always let people know that I do not know what I do. And I'm going to use the openings of purses and shoes, purses for females and shoes for females, as the entry conversation. You can always tell someone that they have a nice purse, a nice set of shoes that they're wearing. Most ladies will not be offended if you compliment them on their handbag. From a male perspective, very few men have purses, so I am going to communicate with them about sports or the news topic of the day, which is why I listen to sports radio on the way to work and news radio on the way to work, so I can communicate about the hot topics. And that's my entry into, so if I'm standing at Subway sandwich shop and there's someone in front of me and it's a female, I can introduce the conversation talking about a purse or a pair of shoes. If it's a male, introduce the conversation by talking about or bringing up a topic of sports or news. It's an easy way to break the ice. Of course, then I'm going to go into my elevator speech about who I am, what I do, and how I do it, and the types of people that I help, ultimately asking them if they know anybody that's looking to buy or sell a piece of property. Believe it or not, last year I had 2 coaching students. I don't know why you wouldn't believe it. 2 coaching students that bought a house, standing in line, talking to a stranger, introducing themselves. So always be prepared to buy a house. Have 4 contracts in your vehicle at all times. Have some business cards. Make sure your vehicle has some cleanliness and clean. Be prepared to buy a house at moment's notice. You never know when you'll have that opportunity. I like wearing my red polo shirts that say I buy houses on them, and it's a great opening into what I do for a living. Thank you for the question. Great question.
Thanks for listening. We'll be right back. Are you running out of leads? It's time you tried Yellow Letters at yellowletters.com. Get motivated seller leads through yellow letters, postcards, zip letters, typed professional letters, greeting cards, door hangers, and business cards. Yellow Letters is a full-service marketing company created with your success in mind. Get the personal attention you need to get your direct mail campaign started and get in touch at yellowletters.com.
And we
We are back in 3, 2, 1.
Question number 3. I believe I've heard Michael say that he puts on the contract a minimum closing date that is equal to the days on market in that area. So if the minimum days on market is 60, then you tell the seller that you'd be willing to close in 60 days. That doesn't seem to be enticing to the seller. Most of the leads I get only call because they are looking to close fast. I thought that a part of our service is that we're closing fast. Can you clarify this for me? You can close as fast as you have money and is reasonable, and your closing company or your escrow company can close for you. Now, I realize in today's marketplace that 60-day closings are standard closing periods. Standard, normal. What the industry calls for. Sooner than that means you have someone who's procrastinated, which is typically what causes the motivation on their part in the first place, which is fine. But I'm always going to go with the 60 days. If someone needs to close sooner than that, then they're going to pay me a cost so I can mitigate ownership. And what I mean by that is if my days on market in an area are 60 days and someone needs their money in 10 days, I can close it in 10 days. However, I know now I'm going to have to own it for another theoretically 50 days, so I want to charge the seller via reduction of sales price the cost of home ownership for that 60-day period. Because if I didn't own it, they owned it, they would have the cost of the ownership. But since they want my money sooner, they have to mitigate that cost for me. Now, if I could take the money out of my bank account and it wasn't a significant issue for me to do that, then I probably wouldn't charge them any other cost. However, if I had to go and borrow the money to do a sooner close, or if I had to jeopardize another closing because I'm taking that money that I was going to promise to somebody else to close this one sooner, which means I'd probably have to borrow money for that one, or stress level would be increased, then I'm going to also reduce the amount of my money costs to close sooner. So if a seller wanted, as an example, $100,000 for their property and they'd wait 60 days, and the $100,000 fit within my business model and my business model's performance requirement, then I'd be fine with it. But if they wanted money in 10 days, then I know I have on a $100,000 piece of property, I probably have about $3,500 in holding costs. And if I had to go borrow that money from a hard money lender, I'm going to have possible 10 points, 10%. So I know that's in a half year period, that's 15% on the 100,000. It's another 15,000. So in this case, I would reduce the sales price from 100 to the 81,500. And you need to do these kinds of things if in fact you have a seller that needs to close fast. And keep in mind, it costs money to close fast. The soonest I've ever closed, I think something is within a handful of days, so you can close really, really, really fast. And the amount of money the seller gets is dependent upon how soon they need their money. So great question. Hope that helped. Question number 4. I have heard Michael talk about different price ranges he offers depending on the buying method. Something like 60 to 70% of as is if being bought seller finance. Can you restate those price ranges for me? Much like the earlier example of having to close sooner, if I have a $100,000 piece of property and the seller is going to give me seller financing and 0% or 1% interest, I may offer the seller a little bit more. If I have a cash purchase, then and it's a 60-day close, and the $100,000 is my business number, then I'm of course going to stay there. I'll offer someone a little bit more money to get seller financing. It's the least risk for me. So let's look at order of risk. Naturally, the highest risk is cash that I'm going to take out of my bank account. Borrowed money is the next one that I'm borrowing. So I'm borrowing it from a traditional lender or hard money lender, equity lender, that kind of thing. Third is subject to, even though I'm not taking any money, I'm not at risk, I'm still required to make a mortgage payment. There is still some risk because of the due on sell kind of thing. And so the least risk is the last one, which would be seller financing. And naturally, if I can create a no payment term, one payment at payoff, that would be better. It just all depends on how you put the deal together. It's one of the things we do in the coaching program is we look at individual deals. I help you strategize how to put it together, what makes sense for both you and the seller. We listen to the recordings. Everything we do is recorded. We can listen for the trigger words, the motivation, the underlying motivation, how you could be more responsible to the transaction and the seller and to yourself. Because we have to create win-win situations, and we have to do it in an ethical, moral, and legal from that perspective. And legal's always last. And when it becomes first in line, then we need to get out of the business. It's always last. It's how you treat people that counts in life. Great question. Hope that helped. But every deal's a little different. So, in the old days, there used to be a standard, this percentage and that percentage. It's not as standard as it used to be. Question number 5. When I'm ready for a new market, what indicator should I look at? Oh, wow. That's a big question. That's a gigantic question. Let me see if I can help. So what I do, what I've done is I've looked at the country, and I've looked at 114 markets. I've looked for a population base of a couple 100,000. I've got the city, I've got the state, I've got the population base, and I also have a link to Trulia where I'll look at Trulia's medians. I'll look at how the median's been fluctuating, if it's going up, if it's going down, if it's a good bell curve, that's a great thing. If it's a roller coaster, it's not so great. I'll look at Trulia's median, and then there are also the rent rolls, which I find a really good indicator. I want to know the month-on-month gain. I want that to be a positive, not a negative. So if I'm in a declining market, it doesn't excite me as much. But if I'm in an aggressive market that is climbing, then I got to be conscientious that I'm not hitting it at the peak, but I'm there. I like climbing. So let's take, for instance, I'm in Bakersfield, so let's take Bakersfield as a city as an example. So let me jump on Trulia. Okay, so I'm at Trulia. I went in there and I Googled median values Bakersfield, California. So whatever city you want to look at. Trulia, and then a whole bunch of them come up. I picked Trulia. I like Trulia's reporting mechanism. So it takes me to today's date, kind of thing. I'm looking at it today. And my 1-bedrooms in Bakersfield median is 84, 2 bedrooms are 120, 3 bedrooms are 201, 4s or 275 for an average of all. Median is 221,750. So if I look at my increases, and this is something that you guys really should look at in your cities, is what's the year on year for those individuals if they have that information. Coincidentally, on my 1-bedrooms, my year on year 1-bedroom has gone up 118%. My 2-bedrooms year on year has gone down 5. My 3s are up at 2 and 0.7. My 4s are up at 1.9, so that's a 2. Not the craziest growth pattern, but not a bad. It's pretty stable. And I know right now my median, it's looking around 225, 224. When I look at that, now I want to look at my median rent, and my median rent's been climbing too, but it's been pretty steady. It's healthy. It's not skyrocketing. There's not a big influx of tenants. There's not a big, tenants aren't leaving fast, so it's not dropping. And my median rent right now is $1,425. So let's look at those two numbers and how they compare. And this is just a cursory review, very quickly. You're asking me, what do you look for as you enter into a new market? When you look at it from a new market, so you can dive in a little deeper. This is just cursory. So I know I have a $2.25 or $225,000 sales price or median, and I have a $1,425. So now let me go to a mortgage calculator. Today's rates on FHA, I think they're around 3.5%. So if I put the 3.5% in, let me do this real quick, on a 225. Sorry, I wasn't prepared to answer this question, but I want to answer it in a way that causes it to make the most sense. So I'm doing a PITI 225, 3.5%, 30-year mortgage, fully am. Click this button. Here we go. So I have a principal interest payment of $1,010. I have a PITI payment of $1,385. Now the reason this is an important number to me is because I want the payment that's being returned on today's interest rate for PITI. Naturally, they're not figuring any mortgage insurance, but there's going to be a little bump there, but not a big bump. But I have a $1,385 on a mortgage payment on a $225,000 value. Now keep in mind, we just did the rent rolls, and the rent in my city is $1,425 as the median. So I know that the median sales price supports the median rent. So I have a natural flow of tenants moving from tenant occupied, from rentals to home ownership. I like that. Well, I can't stop here, so I'm going to go to list source. Here we are. We're at list source. So I'm going to go to geographical Bakersfield, California. I'm going to get that number. And I'm going to go to equity position. So, I want properties that are pretty much paid off. So I want to put in 99 to 100%. And it's going to give me back a number. Okay. Now I'm going to also, under the property tab, I'm going to look for only single families because that's the only thing I really can care about. I don't care about apartments. I don't care about multifamily. I don't care about any of that kind of stuff. I just want single families. It's going to give me a result. And then one of the last searches I'm going to look for is how many absentee owners there are with that criteria. And now I'm going to go and look at last sale date, which is the important number. So keep in mind that in Bakersfield, California, my market, my median's $225. My rents are 14 something. My payment on a $225 is 13 something. So I'm fine there. I can have a $200 spread. So my payments could be, $1,600 and something kind of dollars. And I'd be fine with that. But in this case, in my case, it's actually rents a little cheaper. Now I want to know how many investors are buying in my market for cash and what the numbers have been over 30 days, 90 days, 6 months, and a year. I want to see what my pattern is, if I'm on a declining market pattern, increased market pattern, or stable market pattern, because I absolutely don't want to get into anything that's not stable. So month on month, year on year, what's my pattern been in my city? So if I go here, so I know I have now, again, I've got my city, I've got single families, I've got absentee owned, 99 to 100% equity. That means I paid cash. And in the last year, it tells me that close to 400 folks have bought a house for cash. Well, that's not bad, $35 a month, right? Not bad. If I look at the last 6 months, I have 100, almost 200. So that's about right. A year it was close to 400. Last 6 months, close to 200. That's about right. That means 6 months ago and on, it was pretty stable. So now let's go to the last 3 months. The last 3 months is almost 100, almost 200. So now if I go to the last month, and it's hard to look at the last month as an only indicator because some of the records hasn't caught up to the reporting system. And so theoretically it should be like 33, but it's not going to be, and it's not going to be in very few areas are going to be that accurate for a month-on-month data, which is why we look. Yeah, it's 10. So they're missing some. So I'm not going to worry about the 10 because I'm just not. So I know in my city, I have a median at $225. I have rents that are median out at $1,425. I have a mortgage payment on $225 of $1,385. So I'm under my rent roll. And every month, about 33 houses sell to an investor for cash. Cash. I'm not talking about all the other investors that buy. I'm not talking about all the owner occupants that buy. I just want to know that how many, what's my potential pattern of sales and purchases. That's not bad at all. That's not bad at all. It's one a day. So I like my market. So if I was going to go to a market, I'd do this really fast, this exercise. The other exercise I do is I go back to list source and I'd ask myself how many single families are in that market. And I'd really want to know, if I get a good number of single families and then what the percentage of cash purchases are to those single family units, if I get a good percentage there, I'm going to be extremely happy. But we teach all this stuff in the coaching program. And guys and gals, if you're interested in learning how to do this professionally and on purpose and making some money out of it, we take the guesswork out of it in the coaching program. The coaching program right now is a reasonable number. I think it's, $11.97, $247 a month. Either way. So $11.97 for 6 months, $247 a month for 6 months. A little bit more if you make payments, kind of thing. But man, we're doing 60 classes a month now. Live classes, not recorded. We record everything, but they're live while we do them. Get an accountability coach, you get the CRM system. We have the call center to help you answer your phone if you need that. We have 60 videos and audios and all that kind of good stuff to listen to. Forms galore, but our job is to help you succeed. If you want to get in real estate and you want to learn it the way I do it, come on board. Love to help. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show. Get more info and stay in touch at michaelquarles.com.